Hello, and welcome to the Self-Care with Herbs segment of the Elder Tree podcast. I'm your host, Jess Bosker, naturopath, herbalist, and medicine maker. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Banjalang people, the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, come along and join me each month for beautiful conversations with guests from across the country, exploring ways we can weave plant medicine into our days to enrich our experience of self-care, sharing routines, rituals, and recipes for elevating mind, body, and spirit. Lou Hardwick is a single mother and folk herbalist based on Gumbayniggir country on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. Her herbal creations focus on whole plant, handmade remedies. She orients her offerings and by extension her business to the process of making itself. It's the presence and interaction with the plants and the process of creating that provides her with a powerful sense of self, as well as the inspiration to share her love of this ever-evolving relationship with her community. She aims to empower others to lean into their plant curiosities by positioning themselves as the expert in their own senses and experiences, while providing inspiration to take that first or next imperfect step towards working with plants in a way that savours both a sense of humour and reverence. In this episode, Lou reflects on how even those small and consistent acts of self-care can be incredibly powerful, that in her experience, it's been the bigger yet fundamental decisions and life changes that have been her truest acts of self-care. In her story, it has been the hardest and most challenging turning points in her life that have revealed the path to herbalism. Late last year, Lou launched her first online education offering, Potent Herbal Oils, to great success, quickly transforming herbal-infused oil-making practices and results across her community. Hi Lou, and welcome to the Self-Care with Herbs segment of the Elder Tree podcast. I'm really excited to be chatting with you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's really such a pleasure. I'm really looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better. This is kind of like my secret jam. This is how I get to make more herby friends, because I get to ask lots of questions and find out all about you. The first question I love to ask guests is really a reflective question, and it kind of asks you to look back to where your relationship with plant medicine first began. Like, let's go right back.
I've been asked this question quite a few times, and each time I consider it, it shifts slightly. Insofar as the longer I walk down the plant path and sort of look back over my shoulder, it seems to go back further than what I initially thought. So that's a potentially big and convoluted story, but probably the thing I would like to bring forward is when there seems like there was a really clear before and after for me. So when this whole idea of plants being something that I could build a relationship and work with, and that were actually really powerful and profound, when that really consciously came online for me. So I had to sort of prove it out, I suppose. And like with a lot of people, just listening to other people's stories of how they've come to plants and plant medicine. It came through a time of poor health and confronting a medical system that didn't seem particularly interested in my well-being or even just basic curiosity in my condition. So this is going back 8 years now. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I had cholestasis in pregnancy. So that has to do with elevated liver function and your bile acids and how they drain. But the symptom that comes forward is this intense itching. Typically it starts with your hands and feet, which I definitely had, but it was all over my body. And it was this kind of itching that comes from within. It's not something that can be satisfied with a salve or itching. And it tends to get progressively worse as your pregnancy progresses. And And so when I first started getting quite itchy, I put something quite lighthearted and joking. I was joking about it, I think, and I had sort of a few scratch marks on my belly, and I put it up on Instagram, as you do. And a few people chimed in and said, "Oh, Lou, this can actually be really serious. You should get it checked out." And so I went into the emergency department when it got quite intense one day, and I had this young doctor who very quickly wanted to write me a prescription for, there's this one medication, this is going back a long time, so I don't even remember what it was called. And it was for cholestasis, and it wasn't a curative medication, it was a management type medication. But this doctor didn't do any tests, there was no diagnostic, nothing. And even just on the drive over, I'd done a little Google search, as you do, and it was quite easy to find out what the diagnostic sort of parameters, or what the sort of baseline numbers you're looking for certain things would be to make a diagnosis, and none of that had been done. So I made that. I sort of put that quite gently to the doctor. I said, "Is it standard practice to prescribe and have a patient take a medication before actually doing any kind of diagnostic?" And she sort of just looked stunned, and she actually said out loud, "That's what the computer told me to do." And I was like, okay, I'm going to need more than that. And that was sort of the start of quite a big story, and something I don't think we've got time to go into now. But, you know, they did talk about the increase in stillbirth rates and all the things, and their way of, you know, their hope was, we'll watch you closely and we'll get the baby out early. That's what they had to offer. So I was terrified, and I went to a naturopath because I was looking for help anywhere. I'd never seen a naturopath before. And I had a friend who had seen this naturopath, and yeah, I went to her, and I was crying. I was so scared, and she's like an angel. I can see her face. She's this beautiful older woman, and she didn't interrupt me to tell me about what she was about to do, but she let me really unload on her and get all my fears out on the table. And then she very calmly walked over to a cupboard and got out this gigantic binder folder, a big arch lever binder folder, and she said, "This is the cholestasis protocol and research that I've been developing for the last 20 years." And it was like this hope. I felt like I'd struck gold. And there was a whole protocol about food elimination and, you know, nutrition to focus on and supplements and things. But the one thing that I can't remember a lot of it, to be honest, but the one thing I can remember is this dandelion root infusion that I had to have, I don't know, it was maybe 3 times a day. And I would just make it in my little French press, my little coffee press. And it felt like I was drinking the earth herself. It was so comforting. It was so calming. It was so grounding. And that became the thing that it almost felt like a prayer, like just the process of drinking it. And at the start I had this idea that I had to do it. It was life or death. You know, if I had to follow this protocol and do everything it said, and, you know, it all felt very serious and contracted and, you know, like trying to control the uncontrollable almost. But drinking this dandelion root, that was the thing that really softened me, calmed me down, made me feel nourished, made me feel held. And I really got to this place where, despite all the noise and all the, like, just the relentless fear that I was having thrown my way, I just felt like everything was okay. And not in like a naive way. It was like this felt sense that I was fine, my baby was fine. And yeah, so it wasn't just obviously the medicine of dandelion root and supporting the liver is like a classic. You know, now that I'm a herbalist and I know all about it, it makes perfect sense. But at the time, I didn't know. I didn't know that didn't know about dandelion root. I didn't know about the liver. I didn't know that you could take herbs, drink herbs and support the liver in a myriad of ways. I was completely ignorant. So that's how I went into it. But it's that experience of drinking her pretty much all day. And then, the progression of the disease is it's supposed to get progressively worse, and your liver function is supposed to just keep going up, and your bile acids, the drainage gets worse and worse. And I went in and got tested, and I didn't fit that. I didn't fit that model, and of course they refused to believe that anything that I could do, whether it was food or medicine, anything, they can't accept the idea that there's anything I can do that would impact the health of my liver. Which now, where I am now, is just laughable. It's like saying that drinking alcohol doesn't affect your liver. Like, if we can hurt our livers, why can't we help our livers? Like, it's just it's beyond. And anyway, I didn't actually. That's not where I fought with the system a lot when I was pregnant, but that's actually not where I focused my attention, because they didn't want to hear it. Mm-hmm. They weren't curious. So that was the first example I had of plant medicine, and I didn't even think of it as medicine at the time. It's really interesting how even though it came from a naturopath and it was coupled with other herbs and supplements, I wasn't thinking of it as medicine. It was just this thing I had to do. It kind of snuck up on me. It was a very slow, it was very slow and subtle, and it was more the act of drinking it and just getting to know her that way.
Yes.
And then, obviously, the way that my body responded to it was amazing. And, it was something beyond what the hospital doctors, the hospitalists, could kind of even enter into a conversation about. So that was when I was like, oh, okay, there's definitely something here. And so that was the start. And, just for people that that don't know me, the hospital did want to induce me. At 37 weeks, I was aiming for a home birth, and then all of this happened and just, created all this drama. But my beautiful baby, my daughter Ada, she beat them to the punch, and I went into spontaneous labour at 37 weeks and 3 days, and she was perfect, and it was great birth. So
wow.
So we did great. And that was how, so that's the before and after. So becoming a mum and being pregnant's big enough, but it had this really scary medical sort of situation alongside it. And then it just kind of slowly built from there. The door was sort of ajar, and I had a little peek through, and then, the further you go, it just gets bigger and bigger.
Yes. I love that story, Lou. Thank you so much for sharing. What a time for you. Lots of threads to pull out in there, but what I loved hearing was that sense that you didn't feel like dandelion was medicine, and that kind of opened the door for you to develop that relationship rather than having that separation of often what happens when you think of something as medicine, there's that separation, whereas because you didn't have that with dandelion, you were able to kind of just allow dandelion in and have that beautiful sense of feeling safe.
I think my understanding of medicine has obviously transformed, like, as much as any idea can sort of change from one thing to another on a spectrum. But when I say I didn't think it was medicine, it doesn't actually fall into either of those conceptions, how I thought medicine was and how I think it is now. It's hard to articulate, but it did have something to do with the act. It was it added a rhythm to my day. There's something about hot drinks as well. Like, it really had this, it was something that I was actively doing. There was sort of it was probably the ritualistic, I didn't light a candle. I didn't do it at a certain time of day. I did do it a certain number of times a day, but it wasn't regimented. I, wasn't literally saying a prayer. But that's how it felt, It was the act of drinking the dandelion root that, I don't know, it felt like that was the thing that actually gave me that, like actually helped me to unravel a little bit and to feel like I could actually have some control and have some input and do something for myself that wasn't completely oriented towards fear, risk, all the statistics, which, by the way, of course, the research on this area is terrible. I'm from a research background, and my then partner, he is also, and he's in the medical profession, so we actually did the research to like fact check what the doctors were saying, and the research is terrible. The fear mongering is out of control. Anyway, I won't go into all of that, but it was a huge awakening. Yeah.
Beautiful. So Dandelion was really that kind of the door opening, and I know now that you have a really close relationship with lots of herbs, and that your learning is really embodied and quite similar to that first introduction with Dandelion, where it was, that beautiful ritual and having that daily time with the herb. How did the door continue to open for you with the herbs?
So I did keep up with the Dandelion root. It obviously didn't hold the same, the way I oriented towards it was different for sure. Once I gave birth, the cholestasis resolves. That's the cure. You have the baby, and then the way that the herbs sort of came in more into my daily life, and then actually more, really morphed into what I'm doing now, was through making herbal oils. So I had this baby and I'd had this experience, and I wasn't particularly interested in unnecessarily using chemist-bought things on my child. I dealt with an autoimmune condition, and so I was already on the train of trying to get rid of fragrances and things out of my skincare and all of that. So that was already happening well before I was even pregnant. And so, of course, babies get things like nappy rash. Nappy rash can be pretty gnarly. And I was actually gifted a really basic, I think it was like a 3-ingredient salve from a friend. And I used it, and it was great. And the ingredients were, calendula, olive oil, and beeswax. So simple. And I don't even know how, I'm not exactly sure how the information for the opportunity came past my desk, as it were. I was living in a tiny house. There was no desk. I think we were in lockdown or just before lockdown. Anyway, it was a very strange time, and I had the opportunity to be trapped and on my computer. And I did I'm not sure what the title is, but the herbal oils course with Cammie McBride, who is like the godmother of herbal oils. She is the herbal oil queen. And so I did that, and I started making herbal oils so I could make a salve for my baby. It was really that straightforward.
Yeah.
And from there, I just, it was so easy to get rid of a lot of the product in my house that I was already trying to get rid of. I was pretty tired of researching ingredients and trying to find ethical companies and, all of that. And making herbal oils was like a really practical thing for me to do, and really fun, really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. Especially having a baby in the house and feeling like I had a textile art practice. I couldn't get to that. It was just too much. So many things were beyond my reach, but crafting these herbal oils was so doable. And, you could get these amazing oils done so quickly. And then you'd actually have something that you could have and use. Like it's so basic, but so powerful. And I was hooked after that. The act of making, I think you can tell even my story with the dandelion, like the act of the doing for me. I'm definitely a maker.
Yes.
When my hands get involved, when my body gets involved, that's what really gets me in, and I can see the result afterwards. And one, two, skip a few, I was showing people what I was making, and people were like, oh, can you make a bigger batch next time? And so I didn't set out to create a business. It kind of happened. It happened to me. It happened to me, which I know that happens in small business a fair bit. And so it started with oils and salves. Maybe 5 extra people. I just made a bigger batch, sold those, and then I was away. And then my whole world kind of exploded after that.
And I know you're really passionate about how you source your herbs. Was growing a part of your journey from the beginning, or did that kind of come later?
Yeah, I probably do things. I'm not sure if the way I've done things, maybe it is unique in that the order isn't typical. So when I started making herbal oils, I was in a tiny house with lots and lots of land. I was on my sister's property, 60 acres. So I had the opportunity to grow whatever I liked, however much I could, and I didn't. So I was sourcing high quality herbs for my initial salves that I was just making for myself. And then once the lockdowns and everything were over, me and my daughter and her dad wanted to move. We wanted to move up north to where we are now on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. And where we were living, it was so funny living in a new place. There was a garden out the back, but there were bush turkeys ripping everything I planted apart. It was just it was wild down there. Our house backed onto, this sounds ridiculous, but it's true. Our house backed onto this beautiful river, and in between us and the river is a bat mega colony, and it's just this hive of activity. There's so many beautiful animals and birds and everything, but my garden didn't stand a chance. But I was so determined. So I actually got these grow bags. So you can get different types of materials, but they're essentially like pots, but they're bags, so you can have them full or you can roll them down. You fill them with soil. You plant plants in them. So I had them on my deck. I had them in the carport at the front of the house because we didn't park our cars in the carport. I had these sacks of plants just everywhere. And that was the thing that actually convinced me. And I would tell people often that you can grow herbs anywhere. I think we get so caught up in I need a course for this and I need the book for this, and I think that all those things are great. But sometimes just trying something and like having your fingers crossed is also a really good way. Because what's one thing an example? I did actually get a proper ceramic pot for an elder tree seedling, which, that's very relevant to your podcast. And it went from seedling to flowering and fruiting in a year. It was massive.
Wow.
It was this, and that was in my carport.
Wow.
So not on acreage. We're not talking anything Instagrammable or, that you'd expect, nothing that would ever end up on Pinterest. But she had beautiful, I did buy good soil. She had enough sun. I hung out with her a lot. And she was massive. And everyone's like, oh, how did you do that? I'm like, I didn't do anything. So, the growing the growing has happened in less than ideal situations. And I've moved house 2 times since then. So all the sacks with all the plants have come with me. And, so I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily a smart kind of blueprint that I'd get anyone to copy. It's probably not efficient. Some plants don't love being moved around that much, for sure. But most of them they're fine. They're totally fine. And it might be maybe it is a good, I know some people have been inspired by it because we're sort of conditioned to wait for perfect conditions before we start something that we really care about.
Yes.
And through my experience, I was just telling everyone to get rid of that idea. I'm like, do you have a bucket that you can drill holes in? Do you have an old boot? The children's stories always have the old boot with a flower growing out of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, why not give that a go? Like an old bath or, a good windowsill. I said, I'm always telling people just just put it in the ground and you might be surprised. So.
And it sounds like you get to know herbs really well by that hands-on experience of making medicine with them. That's how it started out with your oils. Has that continued in with your tincturing and other ways of making medicine? You really get to know a herb well by working with it in that way?
It's my favorite. It's my favorite thing to do. I do sit with the plants quite a lot. Like literally just hanging out. I think you'd be surprised how much information, and not necessarily intellectual, but there are some good bits of information you can pick up just by being with them and what they like and how they behave and how they bloom and, all that kind of thing, their personality. But probably more than that, when I actually harvest and I'm breaking the plant down for tincturing or whatever I'm doing with it, that's the bit for me. That's when, I don't know, because I'm waiting for the plant's energy to be sort of at a certain point. So if we're harvesting the aerial parts of the plant, I'm waiting for all the energy to be up in the aerial parts. And then the harvesting, you get it all over your hands, you're smelling it, you actually get to hear like what the plant sounds like when you break it down. Like all of that, I'm in heaven. I'm completely blissed out. I love it. And I know some medicine makers wait for certain times of the month. They do it with their cycle. They do or don't do it when they're menstruating. For me, working with the plants with my hands and preparing them for tincturing or whatever preparation I'm making, that's something I feel like I can show up to good mood, bad mood, high energy, low energy. Like there's no... there's none of that sort of high vibes only kind of, I can't stand that, this idea that we have to be high vibe to work with a plant. Like, I think there's something really, I don't know, I find there's a real problem there with that kind of thinking. So yeah, that's the point for me that I feel I'm really, because we're, it's that real moment of co-creation and turning it from one thing to the next, and that's the best part for me, for sure.
Are you tasting as you're like? Are you kind of?
Oh yeah,
That's another way of knowing and embodying. Using all the senses.
Yeah, smelling, touching, tasting. If it's mugwort, sometimes there's a bit of chatting. But that's another story. I think you've got another question coming up about that.
I do. But let's dive into this concept of self-care and looking at it kind of from a really broad idea of what does self-care mean to you,
Lou? I've been thinking about this since you asked me to be on your podcast. And I noticed that, obviously I jumped at the chance to talk to you about anything. And this is my first podcast that I've actually committed to and followed through. Yay. But I have to admit, when I hear the word self-care, I do have this sort of, I don't know, this guarding, or I feel a little bit like I want to distance myself from it. And that's got nothing to do with the intention around the question. That's got to do with what happens with a lot of things that are originally, for us, that belong to us, that are designed to make us feel good and us feel well, is they get co-opted, they get turned into,
something
they get
else.
turned into a monetized thing, or this unattainable standard, or whatever it is. So I feel like I need to kind of put that up front, that
absolutely
there are many concepts floating around there around self-care, which I find very problematic, and I think that actually get in the way of us actually caring for ourselves. So I think I'm very clear on what as you might be able to tell from how I'm talking, I'm very clear about what I know self-care isn't for me. So trying to be up to date with, the latest supplement, the latest biohack, that's another term that I despise, feeling like you need the latest gadget or even, I mean, and I say this as a person who sells herbal remedies for a living, feeling like you constantly are needing more and more and more and adding more and more and more. To me, that is not self-care. To me, that is, that's adding more to our plate. That's overburdening ourselves. And that's a game we can't win. So for me, that's not what self-care is.
No. Yeah.
That constant striving, searching, feeling like you have to reinvent the wheel. And I've been in that place for sure, but that can really get in the way of caring for myself in any way that is fundamental and sustainable. So in my world, at this point in my life, I think self-care kind of breaks into, there's sort of two levels of it for me. I feel like the one that you'd want to talk about on this podcast are the sort of smaller, more accessible, consistent or regular practices. But I think for me, thinking about especially how self-care has changed for me, especially over the last handful of years, it's fewer things, but they're probably what I would call bigger things. So maybe for the first part of that, so the smaller thing, something like self-care, if I was going above and beyond the normal things, it would look like a body oiling practice. That for me to do that regularly, that kind of feels epic. That feels like an epic treat that I've done for myself. In the context of being a single mother who runs her own business. But I'm using that example as something that I think has enormous potential for nourishment and healing and self-connection and self-love. But the most elaborate herbal body oiling practice or the most incredible herbal supplement you've ever taken or anything like that, it doesn't really seem to stack up to making the decisions to be aligned in terms of your own interests and well-being. So I think this is another reason why self-care as an industry is so lucrative, because it sometimes is this thing that can fill a lot of space and, can feel like spot fire management of our bigger issues. So I don't know if this is taking us off into a tangent.
No, it isn't at all. Yeah. And you've actually inspired me to reframe that question, because I have the same response from so many people, because that word has been co-opted. It's like
loaded now.
And it does tend to narrow the question down into those small things that you mentioned, like the body oiling, and take the conversation away from the bigger things that are required for us to be able to care for ourselves.
Or leave the question in there and leave it in there so that we can redefine it. So, but the things that it can be the smallest thing and it can be the biggest thing. But when I think about how I care for myself now, those things actually aren't accessible or wouldn't be accessible to me if I hadn't changed the relationships that I was in, learning about boundaries. And I feel ick saying that because it's such a catchphrase of the day. Not living a life that is actually true, that is mine, not playing a role that, sometimes we get ourselves into these roles in life and we, wear a mask and, we're not actually living a life that's our own. These are the things that are really hard, really uncomfortable, very scary. But those are the things that I feel like once I addressed and I started to walk through them, all the other things that we would typically think of self-care, treating ourselves well, eating well, herbs, exercise, none of that could have had any space in my life in any real way. No true self-care could actually get in until I had actually done those big things and made those big decisions. So sorry if that's very big scale.
No.
And not in the vein of what's easy and accessible.
No, it really is very true that unless you have made those big changes and really had a good look at what's happening and why those small things can't happen, then you're not up here, making those big shifts that are needed for those smaller things to be able to occur.
Herbs can definitely help with that. Like, I'm not saying there's no role. And I look back at the hardest times in my life and I'm like, oh God, imagine if I had willow then, or imagine if I had tulsi then. And, because I just didn't have this relationship with herbs. So I think they can definitely be helpful, but I don't think that, for me, the way that I access them and use them is, I suppose, allowed for because I've stepped into my life in this way, because I made these really, really hard, really hard and big decisions. And
I think you're right too. A lot of times herbs are used specifically to allow you to continue to push through in a situation where it isn't beneficial to you, when, often the best use of a herb is just allowing you to have that peace and space up here so that you can actually look at what's happening and not continue down that path.
Yeah. 100%.
So, Lou, before, you said over the past couple of years you've made some big changes. Were there some things that were happening in your body or your mind that kind of made you address that? Like, did you have any whispers from your body? Like, often people go, oh, I know, lower back pain is something that if I'm continuing to not listen, that's something that comes up for me. Was there something shouting at you?
When I was looking at these big decisions and, really having to get honest with myself, it wasn't whispers, it was definitely shouts, it was screams, it was, and, this is something that is common to a lot of women in postpartum, with all that comes with it. The sleep deprivation was very acute for me. I had this beautiful and gigantic and hungry and wakeful baby. And by the time you're severely sleep deprived, you're too deep to really have much brain power to know what to do. Well, I did, and I was too far gone to have any kind of
space.
It was really, it felt like survival. It was, and I think the body screaming outside of the sleep deprivation, which obviously has a huge impact on your psyche, was I had my first panic attack, which was obviously terrifying. Logically, I knew I was fine, but my body was telling me that it was summer. I think it was summer. I was hot. I was living in a very dry part of the world, but my body was convinced that there was a tidal wave that was going to come and, sweep us all away. And I was the only person left on earth. That was my panic attack. So I felt that edge of where your mental health can kind of take you. And in trying to get, and it's in the larger context of, COVID was happening and there were lots and lots of factors, but in that environment, I was very isolated. I felt like I was crying for help. Maybe I was. It's very hard to sort of get a grip on how I was to other people because I was so in my own experience. But some big changes had to happen for sure. And it felt like my attachment to reality was at stake. Like the stakes were very high. So it definitely wasn't a whisper.
No.
And so that was I could make a case for herbal medicine that could have really helped me in that time. I can think of about 20 things that would have been helpful, but I wasn't at a point in my plant path that I had connection or knowledge of those things. So So they weren't available to me. So I had to get really real about what I had control over and what I thought was going to, mean that I could, get through it. So, and I mean, these days, it's thankfully, it's much more the whispers that I can hear. So I can, and I am getting better at that. And it's for me, the whispers aren't like if I'm sore or I'm sick or my back hurts, that's quite louder for me. For me, a whisper is when, things like if I'm not dreaming, that sort of creative, imaginative side of my brain shuts down. If my libido is low, and the big one, the one that is lets me hear the whisper really loudly is actually it's actually how I parent. Like if I find myself leaning too much on manipulation and mild shame tactics with my daughter, that's the whisper that I'm not taking care of myself. And that's a big one for me. How I am with my daughter and how I parent is a real reflection on how I'm treating myself. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's a really common one. And we've spoken about some of the really big overlying barriers to caring for yourself and how over the past 3 to 4 years you've been able to make some shifts that have made those small everyday things easier. Looking at those big barriers being removed, do you still find that in a sort of shorter time frame there are some barriers in place that kind of get in the way of looking after yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Running my own business has been who knew that running a business by yourself could be such a personal development tool. I feel like I've learned more about myself and the world and relationships through running a business than a lot of other things. So that's been a really interesting dance for me. My business is life-giving. It feeds me, it houses me, it takes care of me and my daughter. It helps so many people, including myself. It's something that happened to me that I'm so happy about, so grateful for, still can't believe. Sometimes it's just, it can get overwhelming, just the magic of it all. But it's also the hardest thing that I have to balance in my life. If I get sick though, so I can give a lot of attention to my business and I can get quite hyper-focused on certain things in my business, which I think is natural, especially when you're working by yourself and you haven't run a business before. There's no one telling you when to clock out, to take a lunch break. It's all self-regulated. So there's this whole other kind of there's these trade-offs and deals I make with myself. And now I'm in the business of, really trying to it makes you feel a bit crazy because there is like these two people, like you're trying to split yourself, and you have to have these conversations with yourself around how much you give to your business, because it is like a beast. You've got to feed the beast, but you also have to contain it, and you have to control it. So that's my biggest challenge in life at the moment, is balancing the business side of things, which is I love and is so important. But look, I'm fortunate to have a business that I actually want to work really hard on. And so when I am working hard, and I do love working hard, it's something I really believe in. That is such a gift, such a privilege. But you can get too deep, and that bleeds into not eating properly, staying up too late. Every facet of life, your priorities can get a little bit skewed. So that's the biggest thing I'm grappling with at the moment, and I'm in negotiation all the time with it. And last year I was failing at that negotiation. And the last maybe 6 months I've gotten a lot better at it. Yeah, for sure.
And I know too with your business that it's often a period of really intense work, the way that your business works. So are you focusing on, really preparing for that in your care for yourself so that as you get to that really busy period, you are likely to kind of go down a rabbit hole and know that you're not going to be as focused on eating regularly, sleeping as well as you usually would. Is that kind of, do you have that preparation kind of worked into it?
That was my first tactic. And that was my first tactic. And I was actually talking to other business owners. If I was to go back, I would have spoken to people that are actually makers, that are doing production and, making physical product, which has another layer. I was talking to women who ran their own businesses, but they are mostly online. There's not the sort of manual labor and the physical element that goes into it. Anyway, that is by the by. But a lot of the advice I was getting was about supporting myself in those intense periods. So either batch cooking or having a meal delivery, things like that. But a lot of those recommendations are, they attract an expense. So things like having a cleaner as well. Yes. That one, I would love a cleaner. That would be amazing. But I'm not at a point where I can buy all my meals ready-made and have a cleaner come over. That's just not my reality. I've had it suggested that I need to build that into my pricing for my product. Sure, I understand the logic, but I'm actually not there yet with my products, and that's actually, I'm actually servicing a certain section of the community that I believe my price point is really valid and important. That's a whole other conversation. So that's how I started. I started by trying to take care of myself in these really intense periods of opening my shop, going into a shipping cycle, opening myself up to questions and then shutting it down and sort of having a rest and restocking my shelves and all of that. But I was actually finding that, and I'm still using that rhythm, the opening and shutting, because I feel like I have to. I can't. I haven't managed to find another way. But I wasn't actually looking at what the big problem wasn't that I wasn't trying to take care of myself in that cycle. It was that the way I was running my business and the intensity of those cycles was too much for me to manage. It was this Everest task, and I don't think it was, I'm not sure how I even got myself into that expectation that I put on myself and that rhythm. So now I do have ways to take care of myself, especially when my shop is open. But my goal for the year is to sort of soften out the peaks and the troughs of my business cycle. So there's always going to be that sort of uptick of activity or a real shift in energy when I open my shop and when I wind it down and open it up and wind it down. But I'm trying to make them not as extreme. Which also flows into how I want to run my business. I don't like the pressure that I feel it puts on my community and my customers to be hyper vigilant around when my shop is open. There was a bit of panic that people were feeling around missing my shop updates, and I know some businesses do that intentionally to create this feeling of demand, but I definitely wasn't benefiting from it. From a nervous system perspective, from a health perspective, it was really putting me through the ringer. And I could feel myself edging burnout a few times. And the reality is, if I burn out, then it's all for nothing. Like it's all bust anyway. If I'm sick, I can't run my business. If I don't run my business, I've got no income. Like it's not actually worth it anyway. But it's like what I was saying before. I just wasn't looking at it. I was in denial. So, So now my goal this year isn't actually, it's not necessarily product based or, I don't have a monetary sort of goal in mind. It's more about getting my business to suit me, to be something that doesn't take you know, everything I've got, something that I can actually trust, you know, having that trust that there is enough time to do everything. People will wait, you know, all these timelines I've imposed are self-imposed, and you know, I actually can change them. I can change my mind and people will be fine.
Yes.
So that's actually the biggest way that I'm trying to take care of myself is through changing the way that I
operate.
am running my business.
Yeah. I love that, Lou, and it takes us right back to the beginning of our conversation where you were talking about, you know, if we don't look at those bigger things and take the time and allow ourselves the headspace to observe what's happening, then you can't make those changes and you're stuck in that kind of trying to plug holes all the time.
Oh, and I still, like, I can still feel that where the parts of my business and my life where that's creeping in, but I can actually see it. And I can be like, I see you. Like, I can't solve all my problems all at once, but I'm so aware of it now. And I'm like, yeah, I've given myself the year to, you know, to chew off the big parts that were really giving me whiplash. That's actually a really good analogy, whiplash. Because I want this business to to support me and to work with my life in a way that's not just financial.
Yes.
Because it's very clear. I'm a few years in, but I can see very clearly how you can really kill a love and kill a passion and kill a business through resenting it, because you're not actually setting it up to match you and your lifestyle. You're sort of basing it off, and we base it off things that we can see. We use examples, but a lot of what I was doing, it made, you know, I took a few steps back. And yeah, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I don't know why I'm doing it this way. But when you're busy and you're trying to make an income, you know, it's really hard to pause and to feel like you can take a breath and actually look at things.
Yes.
And yeah, last year having this sounds very, I could get really esoteric about it, but I had vertigo for the first time last year. I was literally off balance. It was really scary. Yeah. And that was actually the pause. I could barely walk. I was bouncing off walls. Yes. It was awful. But that was the pause last year. And yeah, that's when I was like, okay, this business has to be for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Forced you to have a good look.
I know, it's always like, sometimes I have to be forced. Like I'm not so wise that I just see these things coming. You know, I definitely have things happen that are like, you will look at this, Lou.
No choice here, no choice.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about your beautiful herbal oil ritual. But before I do, I'd really like to talk a little bit more about your medicine making, because when you started talking about, you know, making your herbal oils, getting your hands in and touching the herbs, your whole being lit up. So I imagine that is a big part of how you care for yourself as well, making space and allowing time for that really beautiful, deep, time-consuming relationship with the herbs.
It's interesting how for some ways that we care for ourselves, it does take a bit of planning. It takes a bit of effort and a bit of self-talk to get to them. And then when you're in them, you're glad you're doing them. And then after you feel fabulous. I don't have that problem when it comes, and I'm a queen bee of procrastination, mental gymnastics. I can talk myself out of anything. If there's a way to, I can. But I've never ever had that problem when it comes to actually working with the herbs. And all those procrastination, like those perfectionist tendencies of needing the correct environment, the correct mood, the correct weather. Actually, I do want a certain type of weather for sitting myself. So if it's humid, forget about it.
Yes.
But I don't. It's this beautiful thing that I don't hesitate. Like if the plant is ready, I will run down to the backyard, you know, and I'll check on them, and then I'm like, this is great. The sun's out, you know. There's nothing sort of standing in my way. It is by far and away the easiest way that I can take care of myself by accessing that feeling of spontaneous joy, mixed with productivity in the good way. And yeah, it feels playful. It's, I think I have been talking to a few women in my community about them starting their own plant journey, like working with the plants, not just taking the plants.
Yes.
And not just growing the plants. And I remember this stage for me too, especially with tinctures. There's this kind of, you can get quite heavy about the idea of a tincture for a lot of reasons. It can feel like this very big deal. And so, yeah, this woman that I was talking to, she was quite intimidated about this medicine she wanted to make. And, it made me reflect on the seriousness with which I used to approach harvesting and processing the plant material. And I'm going to be quite careful here when I'm saying seriousness. I'm not using that word to say that there's no reverence, there's no respect, there's no mystery and wonder and, humbling that can happen when you're working with plants. I'm talking about being so overly serious that you feel like there's a rule or a protocol or you're not allowed to. Someone has to give you permission, all these kinds of things. That's what I mean when I say serious. Before you even sort of sit with a plant. So, I've even got a neighbour who said I could harvest some of her sage last year. And she asked if, a beautiful woman, she wanted to be very respectful of my process. And she asked me if, she had to leave so that I could have my ritual with the plant. And I was so touched that she was, respecting what I was doing. And I think I actually put her off a little bit for a second because I laughed and I said, I said, that's so nice of you, but that is not my relationship with sage. Like I said, if you want to watch what I do to sage and how I am with sage, like hang around. Like sage doesn't care. Yeah. Yes. For me, I'm, you can forge your own relationship of being with the plants. And it can be really edgy at first, but and I think that feeling of wonder is always there. Well, it is for me anyway, and every plant is different. But because I no longer have that feeling of, I'm going to do this wrong. Who am I to do this? That sort of serious, that very serious overlay. It's it's just so accessible to me now.
It's so interesting, Lou. It's a conversation that I've been having with a lot of women, and I'm a practitioner, so I interact with a lot of practitioners and herbalists. I have that feeling exactly like you're talking about, like they're stuck in their own heads often, and there's that seriousness and that mental energy and that almost a fear of doing it wrong, the imposter syndrome, not having all of the knowledge of how to do it completely right. I'm talking about tincturing here.
Yeah.
And I just love how you're speaking about having that joyfulness and still having the reverence, but not being stuck and caught up at, I'm going to do it wrong and I can't even start because I haven't got everything or I don't know everything.
And I should clarify, like I am I don't know a lot about astrology, but I'm classic air sign. I'm all in my head. I can over-intellectualize anything. And so this is my process and I'm totally fine with it. It does take time. But I like to read everything, research everything, just intellectualize everything to death. And then I put that aside, and then I can put it aside. And I almost like literally feel like I do that, and I try to forget a lot of it. And then I encounter the plant, I pick up a few things, I get a bit of a sense of it, and then I can kind of go back. So I'm not so evolved in my animal body that I can do it all in one direction in the way that I romanticize that I can. That's just not the reality of who I am. But one thing that did actually, I love this so much. It was just such a perspective shift for me. And this was when I was I just moved to the mid-north coast. I had all my plants in the grow bags in my carport. That's where I'd sit and have my morning cup of tea. I went to the Wise Women Gathering on the Hawkesbury River. I think that's where I heard it for the first time, this idea. But it was Jackie Bushell, who's the best, the best teacher. If you ever get a chance to do anything with Jackie Bushell, please do. She's
highly recommend.
She is one of a kind. She is incomparable. You can't oversell. I can't oversell or overstate Jackie. And it was this idea of polite communication, which I think, you hear that and it can sound quite, woo-woo, and that's how I used to think of it. But she meant it in a very simple and beautiful way. She's like that tree that's outside your house that you walk past every day. This idea that you would go up, a year living at this house and you would introduce yourself to the plant is kind of hilarious. This plant knows so much about you. This plant knows your daily routine. They know. This plant has been observing you this whole time. You're walking on top of her roots. You are breathing her air. So this idea that the plants are actually, we're not coming into these plants' space and being, jarring them with our we have to have this perfect greeting. It's like they've been they already know you. They've been watching you this whole time, and that was the best for me. It just took all that. I don't know, all these stories. I've got to do it right, yeah. I've got to do it right. I can't disrespect the whatever, yes. Having that idea that the plant actually kind of already knows us really softens that boundary and means you can just kind of sit and be like, hey, hi, how's it going? Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree, Lou. We get in our own way a lot of the time, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm really good at doing that.
I want to talk more about your herbal oils. You have an amazing, beautiful course, and I want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about the ritual. We were talking about the ritual that you use with the oils. So can you explain for the listeners?
So this is something that is alive for me right now. This is not something that I've practiced for a long time. This is something that is relatively new to me. And when I was putting together my potent herbal oils workshop, it's primarily focused around doing really potent extractions of the herbs into the oil, which sounds very simple, and in many ways it is. So that was the focus, because I was seeing a lot of oils being made on the internet, on Instagram, that, it was just, bad advice and a lot of things that were just really grinding my gears, and I thought I can put something together and just help people to make really awesome oils. And that's how I started in herbalism. And I thought, well, this is perfect. I'd been doing it for years, and I could talk about it all day long. And, people, myself included, have an idea of what we would use these oils for. A lot of the time people turn them into salves and use them for cuts and bruises and first aid and sunburn and, this things that arise. But something that I really wanted to do with oils that I haven't done in the past is bring them in as a more proactive medicine. And something that I could do that wasn't, a reaction to feeling poorly or a gash on my leg or a rash somewhere or sunburn, but connecting with the oil and connecting with the plant via the oil in a different way. So part of that was, and this is, I kind of gave myself what I wanted via my very own workshop that I created. But I had Kamala King, who is a practitioner where I live, and I got her to come on board and do like a bonus workshop and talk us through the history, the philosophy of Abhyanga, which is self-massage. Ayurvedic self-massage, and she does this beautiful sequence. So the idea being obviously that people would make the oil and then, do the herbal oil thing, do the salve thing, do all of that, but actually try to extend this idea of how we can use oils in our lives. So I have been trying to, and when I say regular, I'm like, I think last week I was going to do, I'm like 3 days a week I can do this. That's doable. And I did 2, and I think that was really good. So having it at least once a week, but aiming for more than one, I think for me that's achievable. And for people that don't know, it's body oiling. It's using warm oil, starting at your head and doing your whole body all the way down to your feet. And it's self-massage, and you don't have to do it with a herbal oil. You could use olive oil in your house. You could use whatever, sesame oil. If you're wanting something warming, you don't have to have a special medicinal oil.
What are you using at the moment, Lou?
I'm using my St. John's wort oil.
Oh, beautiful.
With Abba-Yanga, the idea is that you warm your oil first. So you can, if you've got a small bottle of oil, you can warm it up in hot water, or you can, putting the bottle in hot water, I should say, or you can get special oil warming. I'm not even sure what you'd call it. It sort of looks like an oil burner, except you put the oil, you don't use it for scent, you use it to heat your oil with the candle underneath. But because I'm really looking forward to winter, actually, so I can actually lean into that idea of a warm oil. But it's been very hot and muggy up here in the subtropics. But I was wanting that warmth, and St. John's wort actually has that sort of like the plant, not the oil, has that sort of stimulating, warming, invigorating action and element and personality to it. So that's what I've been using. And I find St. John's wort oil so enlivening, and the smell of it really helps get me in the zone, I suppose. So that's what I've been using. I think when the workshop went live, I was just using they're all oils that I make. So I was using my tidal oil, which is one I make for my shop, which is more for cycle discomfort. So again, warming, stimulating for the hips and womb space and back. But if it's like a really hot day, I would just use olive oil, or I've got some rose oil, which is just like a rose and rose hip oil. And because my body is so hot, I don't feel like I need to warm my oil.
Yes.
But because this practice is new and I haven't actually done it into winter, I'm really looking forward to warming my oil up and actually using the warmth in the oil as part of my practice. And what I would say, I'm sure there's lots of tutorials on YouTube or whatever, and you obviously don't have to buy my workshop to do Abba-Yanga, because it's literally self-massage, and you can be quite intuitive with it, and it's very, very, it's really, really nourishing. It feels beautiful. Obviously, it releases a lot of tension. It's great for your nervous system, which in turn is really great for your immune system. So that's kind of where I'm leaning into that practice, supporting my immune system through supporting my, my rest state. Also that's that's something that's new for me. I don't have a lot to report back yet.
You spoke about, before we hit record, you spoke about how it's been a bit of a process to really fully commit, because sometimes it feels a little bit uncomfortable.
Yes.
Working your way through and the self-massage.
Well, starting out, I think, even just the act of putting oil all over yourself, people could find that the idea of that exhausting, the idea that you're going to have to deal with being oily, especially if you start at the head and you're putting oil onto your scalp. I think, it's one of those things, the more I do it, the easier it is to sort of let go at the start of it.
Yeah.
It's, so even just the act of covering myself in oil at the start felt kind of big, and now it's not an issue. I've got my towel, my dedicated towel that doesn't matter if I get oil all over it. I do it at home, so I don't worry about if I'm going to get oil on my clothes, because I'm not wearing any. And, after I've done my practice, I let the oil soak in, and then I have a shower. So it's something that, being oily seemed like a big deal. Now it's not. But the other one, and the big one, is, this resistance to touch. to slow, repetitive, intentional touch, head to toe. And yeah, being okay and pausing and sort of letting yourself give extra attention to those parts of you that you do have guarding and that you do feel resistance against. There's a lot of information in there, and it changes. I remember the first time I did Carmela's sequence. The section where we were actually doing womb hara, we were doing this massage across our womb space. And my hips actually, I was just, I could feel all this emotion rising, up through my throat and into my face, which I didn't have a problem with, but I was like, whoa, this is a lot. And then last week, I'm doing the same sequence every time just until I sort of get more body literacy and get practice with how it feels, and then I feel like I can sort of tailor it to myself. But I'm not at that level yet. But then last time, I didn't have that response at all. And the part that I felt like I could have just stayed in for days was towards the end. I had, warmed the oil on my hands, and I interlaced my fingers and clasped my hand over the tops of my toes. And that was the that was like the moment. So it really moves, and it can be surprising. And the last week with my feet, I was just like, wow, that was the spot. And I think about just that act, how simple that was, having hot, oily hands and just encasing my toes with my hands. And I was just like, whoa.
Beautiful.
But you have to show up for it. You know what I mean?
And continue through the discomfort.
Yeah. And the more I do it, obviously I can sort of get to that place and get into the groove every time, which allows for a little bit more exploration as well. You sort of open yourself up to being a bit more spacious about it. So the challenge will be doing it as the weather gets cooler. I might have to I don't have an open fire or anything in this house, so I'll have to come up with ways to keep myself warm.
Way.
Get some more towels I can destroy.
Beautiful. Lou, we could keep chatting for hours, but I'm going to pull it together with one last question. And I'm sure the answer to this changes as you're in a different space of your journey and maybe day to day. But at this present point in time, what plant do you have the deepest connection with, and why is that?
Oh, I read this question and you sent it through, and I thought, how on earth am I supposed to answer that? And I went through all the things. I thought about different times in my life. I thought about what I couldn't live without, and I tried to figure out how to actually approach this question, which I think is actually a good one. Like, it's frustrating, but I actually think it was a good one because I had to think about, well, it's not what you couldn't live without. It's not the one that you like the most. It's not the one that, you're best known for. Yep. It's not the one that's the easiest to grow. It's the connection. Like you're actually asking about the connection. I was like, and when I think about it like that, it's clear. There's a clear outlier. She's over there. She's, the connection is so strong that, I kind of I feel like I just want to burst out laughing. And I've never had an experience that compares, is mugwort. And I like your look on your face. You're like, I knew you were going to say that. So I was referencing my friend earlier who was, she'd come full circle. She had actually made her plant tincture by the last time we spoke, but the plant that she was wanting to work with was California poppy, and how, that feeling of intimidation, and it felt so big to be making a tincture out of her, and how much time it took to get to to kind of get it to happen. And so I was actually reflecting on this relationship with mugwort, like, I don't know, 4 days ago, when I was saying, this is I can relate to this. This is something that happened to me. So for some reason, when I was growing mugwort, or prior to growing mugwort, she was coming for me. It's like, I say it like she was a predator, but it kind of felt like she was everywhere. All of a sudden, there were conversations happening about her. There were workshops happening about her. I would be driving somewhere strange and I would see her and I'm like, why is mugwort here? She was 100% coming for me. And I was just like, oh God, this is weird. I hadn't had that kind of feeling like a plant was suddenly everywhere. It was intense, but it was playful. It was playful but intense, and I didn't sort of take it too seriously. And then I started growing her, and I was, intimidated. I was intimidated by her. She was so. The bigger she got, the louder she got, and I hadn't had the experience of a plant being loud. And it's sort of something hard to articulate because I don't have any other plant to compare it to in terms of this kind of experience. But she just had so much personality. Her presence was so strong, she was just so loud. I don't know how else to describe it. So it took me a while to get used to that, and I sat with her more and more. And then, her loudness became like cackling laughter. And so I could laugh with her and sit with her. And so I kind of was like, I don't know, I imagine it like a cartoon where, you've got the characters that are sort of sitting far apart and then over time they sort of edge together. Yes. Like I've got this sort of picture that I was like that. I sort of just edged closer and closer. And so it kind of felt like this big, it almost felt like this indulgent, ridiculous kind of, long story I was having just even growing her. And then I harvested her, I tinctured her, and whatever it was, 8 weeks later, I strained her off, still loud, even in the glass. My gosh, even when she was macerating, still loud. And I'm like, gosh, people are going to think I'm crazy when I tell this story. But then it came to consuming her, to tasting her, and I put a few drops on my tongue, and it was just this instant like, it's you. I'm like, oh, I know you. And I think I've had mugwort tea. I've never had a mugwort tincture before. And it was just like
familiarity.
It was so familiar. Yeah. And there's no logical way to explain that. But all that kind of, I don't know, this sort of pretense I had, this big story I'd had. And then the moment that I tasted her and my brain sort of registered, I was like, wow. I'm like, I know you. I was like, oh my God, this whole time it was you.
Wow.
So I don't know what that means. Does that mean that she's the plant of my people? Does that mean that I really need bitter herbs? And maybe I do. My poor old liver, my sad little liver that's just, been hanging on. I don't know what it means, but it was,
wow.
Yeah, it was just that,
experience.
Like we've met before. It was like,
yes.
It was kind of like birth. You've never done it before. It's completely novel. But when you're in it, you're like, hang on, why does it feel like I've done this before? But I haven't. It's like, it was like that.
So interesting, Lou.
Yeah,
all around you, and then that instant recognition.
Yeah, and I think I have told that story to a few people, and I think that they then think that this is my experience with all plants, that I have this direct line, I'm like on high, and I'm all seeing, all knowing, and that's not my experience. It's just that's an experience I had.
That one plant.
With this one plant.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There you have it.
I love that story, Lou. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with me. It's been really beautiful. It's been a very different conversation to the ones that we often have on this podcast, which I think is going to be really well received by everybody. We will share the details of how people can access that beautiful herbal oils course, which includes the beautiful workshop on what we were talking about, the techniques for using the oil topically. And also we'll share your website, and so then people can be aware of when your next shop update is. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jess. And thank you for being open to, maybe conversations that are a little bit outside of what you normally have. But that's where I went when I read your question. Yes. So I thought, if that's coming through, that's what I'll talk about.
And beautiful, powerful conversation about the bigger parts of how we care for ourselves.
Yeah. Thanks so much. That was great.
Thanks, Lou. I'm so glad you tuned into this episode of Self-Care with Herbs, a segment of the Elder Tree podcast. The Elder Tree is a non-profit dedicated to putting the medicine in the hands of the people through grassroots herbal education and earth skills, weaving a strong community of herbalists, healers and plant folk in Australia. If you'd like to dive a little deeper, you can head over to our Patreon, the Elder Tree Trove, to access special content from our podcast guests. I hope you found something in this episode that has inspired you to begin to lean into those plant allies and to experience your practice of self-care blossoming and blooming. I look forward to sharing more ways you can weave plant medicine into your days next month.